Hey guys, welcome to this week's math lesson. Basically, I'm going to be trying to do a little video like this at the start of each week to take you through the assignment that you are actually getting. Now, what I'm saying is that if I give you guys a video on a concept, sometimes it's hard to actually see where those concepts apply in our assignment. So if we can just go through the assignment question by question, it might help us to just have a better understanding. If at any point you have a question about one of the questions that are presented to you, then just let me know. We can deal with that one specifically. But otherwise, I'm hoping that as I get used to doing these, you can just go back to this video and hopefully see what you're missing. All right, so this week's lesson is on Cartesian coordinates. Now, Cartesian coordinates is basically finding a point on a graph. It's the start of graphing. Many of you guys have already been exposed to it. You've done it in other years. But remember that we're all coming from different schools. So some of us might have been doing this a lot in our classroom, and some of us may have been doing it a little. But either way, whether it's review or whether it's brand new information, it's always really great to do. So, basis of Cartesian coordinates is that we have two axes. Now, axes are basically lines or directions. So we call this one here on the bottom, or the horizontal, the x-axis, and then this one going up, or the vertical, the y-axis. And we can use those two axes to find any point on a graph. Now, you guys have done this before. I'm sure you've played a game like Battleship, where you use something on the bottom here and something going up here to find a point on a graph. Now, the main concept here is that you always run before you jump. Now, that means that you always go this way before you go this way. Now, if we did it the opposite, we get to a different point. So if I jumped before I ran, so if I was looking still at this coordinate pair of 6, 7, but I jumped before I ran, and I went up 6, and then I went across 7, I get a different point. So you'll see when I did it the proper way, I went here, and when I did it the incorrect way, I went here. Now, that's really important to remember because, like, although the 6, 7 coordinate pair, they're really close to each other, some of our coordinate pairs, they're going to be really different, right? Like 2, 8. That if I did them incorrectly, I get a very different point on the graph. And whenever we're talking about anything in math, we need to be exact. So it's got a bit of instructions on your assignment here. It says, before you jump in and start graphing, let's go over some important words. And you're going to use them now, but you're also going to use them throughout the rest of your math career. So the horizontal part of the graph that goes left to right is called the x-axis, just like what we talked. Now, that's where you put the stuff or the variables that you are measuring, like time or pets. So if I was looking at measuring how many cats are on my street, that's where I'd put my variable. So I might have a variable for black cats and orange cats and gray cats, but that's where my variables are. Now, the vertical part of the graph, the part that goes up and down, that's the y-axis, and that's where I'm going to put the quantity that I'm measuring. So if I wanted to know how many black cats I'm measuring, I put that here, and then I'd put the numbers going out this way. Now, that's the same throughout all sorts of graphing. Now, when we're looking at these Cartesian coordinates, we're basically taking a math equation and we're putting it on a like making a picture out of it, basically is what a graph is. Now, the coordinate pair, which is x, y, gives directions so that you can spot it on a graph. Kind of like reading a map or like I said, creating a picture. The first half of the pair is always the x coordinate. Again, that's the one going this way. And then the second part is always the y coordinate. Now, one of the things that I sent out on the instruction booklet on the first page is that this whole Cartesian coordinate thing, it actually is a big plus sign. And kind of like a number line, we have 0 in the middle. We'll have positive numbers going over this way, negative numbers going this way. Again, positive numbers going this way, negative numbers going this way. It's really confusing. It's a lot to handle. So right now, what we're going to deal with is this right here, which is all positive numbers. We call it quadrant number 1, and that's because of how this is set up. Now, so the reason I'm telling you this, even though it sounds confusing, is so that whenever we're talking about quadrant 1, you're understanding why we're calling it quadrant 1. Now, in quadrant 1, we have all positive numbers because this area here is positive and this area here is positive. Quadrant 1 is a little bit easier to navigate when we're reintroducing our brains to the idea of Cartesian coordinates. All right, so this page is just your examples. When you're going through it, it's just trying to get you to figure out, like, get a little bit of practice. So the first one is trace with your finger how to get to 3, 9. So it's asking you to do this, like start at 0 and move over your x-axis first. So moving over 3 and then up 9 and giving you the point. You'll notice that as this is just an example, it actually does it for you, but it's asking you to just move your finger along that line to get used to it. So the next one says, can you name the coordinate pairs at the right? So the logical way to do this would be to make a little table here, or list the numbers A, B, C, D, E, F, because those are all the ones that are on there, and then start figuring them out. So let's look at A first. We're going to figure out how far we run this way before we jump. We actually don't run this way at all because it's right here. So I know that my run on it, or my x-axis, is 0. And then it's asking me, how far did I jump up? I went all the way to 9. So my coordinate pair for A is 0, 9. Now I'm looking for B. This is B right here. So I'm going to look, how far did I run? I ran 6. And then how far did I jump up? I jumped up 7. Now you guys can do C, D, E, F by yourself. I know that that's enough that you can do that. Now the next thing it says, graph the coordinate pairs listed below and connect each to the previous to make a secret picture. If you do it right, you should get an A. And it says, try connecting with a ruler for nice lines. All right, so this has the key right below it. It tells you exactly what it should look like. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to 4, 6. So remember, I'm running this way before I jump up, but I want to find this. Now you see how I've made this line here? You don't actually have to make that line. That line is like my guide. So that's what I would be doing with my finger, and then I'd be making the point. The reason that I'm drawing the line now is that if I do it with my finger, you guys can't see it. So my invisible line would go this way, and I'd make my big dot there. Now my next one is going to be at 5, 8. So there's my 5. I'm going to go all the way up 8. Now, because we're not numbering these, at this point, you're going to want to draw your line in between them. The next one is at 6, 6. I'm going to draw my dot, make my line. Now, you guys get how the rest of this is going to work. You're going to keep on going until you've made all those dots and connected those lines. It does say, hint, try connecting with a ruler for nice lines. We always like to do our work with quality, so feel free to do that. All right, the next part is, there's 2 pieces to this. So it's looking at where our lines connect to, and it's basically also trying to get us to follow some instructions and work on our fine motor stuff. All right, so the first point that it asks us to, what it's asking you to do is see where each point connects to. So the first point it's asking us to connect to is this 1, 0. Now it's asking you to use a ruler to connect here. I don't have a ruler, so I'm going to use this function on my smartboard, which allows me to draw a straight line. Now you'll see that if I move it to one of these other points, it doesn't actually go through the center. So I need to find where does it actually go through the center, and I can see that it goes through the center here. The point that it connects to is right here. And so when it says, where does 1, 0 connect to, I'm going to look, and I ran over 9 and I jumped up 10. So 1, 0 connects to 9, 10. Pretty straightforward. All right. From here, there's 5 different big questions in your book. You'll notice that on them there is a lot of points that you have to graph, and you have to make a picture, kind of like you did in this example where you were starting to do a little picture. Now you have to do a big picture. Now in the instructions for this, I've let you know that I'm only looking for you to do 2 of these. They take a bit of time. If you want to do more, like if you're enjoying it and you want to do more, feel free to do more. Or if, on the other hand, you're struggling with that concept, for sure do more. So if you do one and it doesn't look at all like it was supposed to, then take your time, figure out what you were doing wrong. Were you graphing your XY coordinate wrong, or were you just not taking the time to get the right point? And then you create that dot to dot. So I provided the graph paper at the back of the book so that you could have this page and then the graph paper side by side and go through it. That's not possible to do on the smartboard, so we're just going to remember some of these. So the first one is 7, 10, and the next one's 3, 7. So I'm going to go to my graph paper. I'm going to find where my 7, 10 is. It's here. And then my 3, 7 is here. I'm going to draw my line. Again, use a ruler. It makes it look a lot nicer. And then my next, so I did 7, 10, I did 3, 7. My next one is 5, 7. So let's figure out 5, 7. I'm going to draw my next line. Simple enough. Next one is 1, 4. I'm going to draw my line. And so on and so forth until I get my picture. Now you'll notice that on the back of each of these is the key. That's to show you what it's actually supposed to look like at the end. Once you have completed the question, go back, make sure that your key lines up to this. You can even hold it up to a window to see through and see if any of them are incorrect points. And if they are incorrect points, what you're doing. Now, this seems like a really easy assignment, and it seems like a lot of doing the same thing over and over again, right? Finding a point on the graph, drawing a line. Now, the reason that we're doing the same thing over and over again is because we want to infuse something into our brain. And the something that we want to infuse into our brain is that you always run before you jump, that you always do your X coordinate first before you do your Y coordinate. And the more practice we have at that, the more we do that over and over again, it's going to be ingrained into our brain, and it's going to be a lot easier to take that with us moving forward. These are one of those concepts that we want it to be kind of like reading sight words in a book, that it just happens naturally. And so that's why we're asking you to plot a whole lot of points and draw lines just so that it becomes ingrained. Remember that when we're creating routes and paths within our brain, the more times we do it, the easier that is to happen. So we want to get it to a point that our brain never tries to do the Y coordinate first. It just always goes X then Y, and it does it naturally. All right, I'm going to go back and do videos for the other 2 assignments, like the first 2, in case you struggled with them. They just might take me a little bit longer to do because they have more in-depth concepts. But I hope this helps, and I will talk to you guys soon.